Good morning to everybody. My name is B.V. Paparao. You all know Mohan Guruswamy is a son of the soil of West Maredpalli and born and brought up right under this building and studied in Nizam College, and whose father was an army officer and a Hyderabad Civil Service and Indian Administrative Service officer, and whose name this center is established. I think there can't be better person in Hyderabad than analyzing the budget than Mohan Guruswamy. You all know him here, but I like to make one or two points. He has been very well-known strategic and economic affairs scholar and a journalist. And apart from that, people can just sit and write comments on government, but he himself was part of the government, and particularly in VP Singh's government. And then Vajpayee's government, particularly in Vajpayee's government, he was economic advisor to Yashwant Sinha. Now I'll introduce in few minutes the economic survey itself. Economic survey is essentially an analysis, a very serious analysis of past 12 months, how the economy grown or not grown, how it performed. It's a performance report. So if you want to make a budget next year, so you have to know the performance of this year. So that is the core objective of economic survey. And as students of JNU, we used to wait for economic survey to come, because this used to be a Bible, and the numbers given in that and the comments made in that, conclusions drawn in that were like, it's like an authentic document. Anyway, now to sum it up, this is not a 12 months economic survey, it is almost like a 3 millenniums economic history, which is in the thing. Well, with this general theme of the thing is all is well. He doesn't say balance of payments are at 430 billion, external debt is at 20% GDP, fiscal deficit is at 3.3, revenue forecast is falling, but he doesn't really worry about it. Now all is well, but and in the volume 2, he also definitely admits the slowing of growth and shortfall in revenue. You know, all this impact of prices on the current account, oil prices on the current account, and recommendations of the Finance Commission again in the budget. All these issues he takes forward and suggests few measures also that how we reach 5 trillion economy. He says there is this 1.4 trillion USD investment in infrastructure, which will take India's economy to 5 trillion by 24 by 25. And also says one of the major things is ease of doing business. And ease of doing business, he says we were at 179 in the world in 2014 in the ranking, and we are now 69. So further to go. And another thing he says, efficiency of the banking has to improve. Again, each of these things he goes to all the way to Kautilya to Adam Smith. And the banking also he went on very interestingly, but one of the solutions he said that employees stock options. Now I really didn't understand if these banks, the bankers who themselves are not working, and if you give stock options, I don't know whether they'll work for the profit. That's one of the things. He identifies, admits the problem of cash crunch in NBFCs, and he kind of suggests a health score of NBFCs. That means you have to keep monitoring the health, like we go to executive test. So health score is the one like he kind of defines and suggests that the NBFCs have to be kept monitoring. Who will monitor? Maybe RBI. And of course, disinvestment, which is a favorite thing going on. Of course, very few public sectors are left, and particularly he talks of BPCL. I do not know why it isn't very exhaustively in the disinvestment chapter. I don't know if Adani or Ambani brothers are interested, I want to understand, but there's an extensive coverage on BPCL. And finally, he says that as far as coming to markets, he says don't hurt markets. You should be pro-business and not. It kind of brings about that liberalization to now, it was a little bit of a crony capitalism, which I admit a little bit haywire it has gone, and certain people have really, particularly some people from Hyderabad, also become very big billionaires with the political connections. So he says that, report says that it should be pro-business, not pro-crony capitalism. Also, he talks of how to help markets is to either weed out or reform certain acts like Essential Commodities Act, Drug Control Act, several legislations in this, and which will help the market, and also talks of direct cash transfer to the benefits of the people so that the demand is generated. And but he talks of the benefit of direct cash transfer in Brazil, Mexico, Philippines, but he forgets Telangana. Telangana is one of the direct cash transfer states in India. He should have gone to the states to study which state is doing a direct cash transfer and helping. Then it doesn't, in this chapter I see this is not an Indian economic survey, it's a world economic survey. And also kind of come to the conclusion that don't disturb the market, but come to the rescue of the market. But markets are not believing, as you have seen yesterday. Now, finally, he pegs and brings down the growth rate to 5%. And I do not believe it is correct, but doesn't give the reason. I really didn't find much of the reasoning why it has come down. And economic survey, 2021 budget, he advises the government 6% to 6.5%. But yesterday FM announced it will be nominal 10%. Now where is this gap? Economic advisor writes a day before 6 to 6.5%. Now Mohan has a big challenge to explain how it goes to 10%. And how does this 10% it will come about when we all know that the economy is slowing down. When it is slowing down, at least you peg it at that 6.57% when we are saying, but you cannot really say that it will jump to 10%. Now Mohan has a very important task. Now I'll give it to Mohan to analyze the budget and see how we will grow at 10% this year and how we will reach 10 trillion in 24-25. Thank you, Mohan.
So anyway, thank you for coming on Sunday morning. And what I had to say about the budget is already been said in the papers this morning, and it was on TV last night. And but therefore I'm going to go a little beyond the budget, because the budget always the post-budget discussions can tend to be dominated by chartered accountants. And chartered accountants will tell you how much of money you're going to save or how much of money you have to provide for the next year, etc., etc. But the number of people who pay taxes in this country is about 2% of the population. So the budget is not about 2%. The budget is about 100%. And so an economist looks at it very differently. We look at what the macroeconomic problems are and what is the goal of public spending is to bring more people into higher income groups, more people into the middle class, etc., etc. And then, we try to see how you can meet objectives. Now, if the Prime Minister has set out an objective, he's shifting dates now. In 2024, he said, we will be a 5 trillion economy. In the last few weeks, I've noticed very quietly that they've shifted it to 2025. Now, if you want to be 5 trillion in 2024, you've got to be growing at 14%. If you want to do it in 2025, you've got to be 12.4%. You're nowhere near those figures now. This is, as Amit Shah would say, another jumla, to say it. But we will be 5 trillion sooner or later. Whether it's going to be 26 or 27 or 28 depends on how we're going to do the next few years. So I'll get down to a little the chief economic advisor went down to Angus Madison in the year 0. I won't go that far. I'll go down to the year 2000 and see what happened since then. Now, this has been from 2010, this has been the real GDP growth rate since that period. Real GDP growth rate for an economist is nominal GDP minus inflation. So this is what we have been growing at this year. In 2010 we were at our highest, at close to 11.2%. And from 2010 we have been coming down and down, and today we are now at real GDP growth of about 3%. Now that is our situation, how to get growth up. Because if you don't get growth, government won't have revenues. If you don't have revenues, you can't invest. If you don't invest, you don't create growth and create jobs and create more revenues. So it's called the virtuous cycle, that you put money and hope that you'll reap a harvest down the line. So growth has slowed down. So first challenge is growth, to get economic growth back. And if you're going to do 12.4%, you are starting at close to 3. To do 12.4% is a major challenge. Very few countries, no country has done it in the history of the world. Even China took 1 decade to reach these levels. We are not going to do it. But if you go to have a post-budget event at the CII, the Confederation of Indian Industry, where NDTV was broadcasting yesterday, and all the ministers and prime minister, everybody went there, and the industrialists all keep telling you what a wonderful budget it is. But that is the job of an industrialist, because I always say that the characteristic of an industrialist is to stand there with his arms out, because he wants some more from you, and he doesn't want to get into your bad books, so he will tell you it's a wonderful thing. Only one industrialist I noticed yesterday, that is this lady from Biocon, who said it's a bad budget. It doesn't do anything for us, it's bad for industry. But that takes courage. Now, when I spoke about growth, growth is related to what your savings GDP ratio is. Savings in the economist context is household savings, government savings, taxation, all these incomes which you get, we call it savings under one head. If you don't have savings, you won't have money to invest. In 2008, the savings rate was close to 35%. And China's savings rate is 53%. Now you got to understand the difference. 53% the guys have got to put back into the economy and to get those growth rates. The Chinese growth rate has been the longest sustained, highest growth rate in the history of the world. No other country has done that or will do it again. We can't be like China, we can't be a highly regimented, controlled state. But if you go to China, you realize it's not so regimented and controlled as you would like to think from outside. But you have to aspire for higher. You have got to get closer to 40%. And we have done 38% in the past. So doing 40% is not an insurmountable challenge. But you must have the political will and determination to do it. I don't see that. And so savings rate now is down to 28%. The 28% savings rate, you're not going to have much money to invest. And that is being seen in this investment GDP ratio. In 2000, it was 25%. And then the Vajpayee government began to push it up, and it started climbing, got closer to 30. As you can see, in 2007, it was close to 40% in India. This is the investment to GDP ratio. And that was the highest peak, which is why the Manmohan Singh years, in hindsight, when you look at it from now, from this period, it looked like a golden age. Because we thought that that decade was the fastest growing decade in Indian history, 8.2%. 2014 to 2004 to 2014. That if we can replicate again, then we might be on the path to something significant. But that is not happening, not to be seen. Though the finance minister said green shoots are visible. I can see a lot shooting in the air, but no green shoots. Now this is the economy's report card. Private consumption has been falling. That is, people are not going to spend money, not going to buy things, not going to buy cars, not going to buy refrigerators, not going to buy washing machines, not going to restaurants. The restaurant downstairs has just closed after having a peak season in July, August. He suddenly said, there's no business, people are not coming. Now, there are closures all over. The car industry is tanked. And you ask why is the car industry tanked? So RSS spokesman will say people are going by Ola and Uber. But then why aren't cars selling? So these are things which, and the automobile industry is not something to be laughed at. It is 7.5% of our economy. And if it is not growing, you're not growing. Right or wrong, you can talk about the wonders of public transport and buses and, why people should walk and go on bicycle. But we are hooked on to the automobile industry as a growth indicator. Indian households are saving less than they used to. People are not putting money in the bank. There are two reasons for that. You're one, worried whether banks will hold, whether you have confidence in the bank. And one reason the finance minister said, raise the insured limit from 1 lakh to 5 lakhs. So if you have a crore rupees to put in the bank as your retirement nest egg, then you go and open 20 bank accounts in 20 different banks to be insured. But it's an indication that things are not good, and the government has to shore up bank investment by a higher rate of insurance. So where is money going? Indians are buying gold. You can't go to the stock market because stock market is unreliable. So retail investors have gone away from the stock market. And what little retail investors are there, their confidence is shaken by events which are happening in Karvi and other registrars of shares. And what happened in Karvi, I can tell you, is happened to all other companies, whether it is Kotari or whether it is whoever it is, who are share brokers. They all have taken our shares and given to banks as collateral, and banks have given them money, and now they're not able to pay the banks, so the banks are saying we want those shares. Now, I asked the basic question I asked when the Chronicle and Business Standard reporters came to see me. I said, those shares are mine. They're in my name. How can somebody else, a third party, who's just a fiduciary, to act for you for the shares, hypothecate it to somebody else? And how did the banks accept it? How did the regulator allow it? So who's going to go to the share market? So, household savings are coming down, household investments are coming down, and there's a slump in income growth. We are basically not becoming as rich as we used to be. That rate has started coming down. Even though GDP income is going up, our individual incomes are coming down. And the pace of capital investment is at 28%. It is an abysmal level. At 28%, you got to take it up at least 10 points before you can start dreaming of 12% GDP growth rate. It's not happening. So I'll give you that little backdrop, and I'll do a brief survey of the Survey 2020 guidelines. It has great homilies, great essential truths, Wealth creation benefits all. Wonderful. Markets enable wealth creation. So he talks about Adam Smith now, 1640. Adam Smith said, leave everything out, leave it to the hidden hand, and hidden hand will take care of it. If you talk about hidden hand now, they say you have a hidden mind, But he's talking about hidden hand. trust and public good that I will do, that I will use. Grassroots entrepreneurs, Papa Rao has mentioned that at district level, pro-business policies are equal opportunity. Remove anachronistic government interventions. Job creation by assembly in India for the world. Changes in ease of doing business for India to rank in the top 50. What went up by 20 points last year was the ease of shutting down a business was improved. That you could close down your business. But you have 8 or 9 parameters. The parameter which determines how much time it will take to start a business hasn't changed. That is, acquisition of land, registration of land, acquisition of sanctions for building, and then putting it up. If that is going to take 181 days, it doesn't matter if you can shut down in 20 days. But you're still going to take 180 days. So this is something which we must realize. Banking sector, subscale compared to the economy. The banking sector, 80% of the banking sector is government sector. And in the government sector, the Department of Banking in the Ministry of Finance effectively controls the banks. It tells them every day what to do. The joint secretaries say who's going to be the executive director, who the general manager is going to be, etc., etc., and who they should lend money to. I was been near the PMO and near the Ministry of Finance for many years, and unless a word goes out, no bank will lend you money. If it's a big amount of money, you buy a car and all, it's fine. But if you want to sell a steel mill, you have to get an okay here. And before you get your okay, how elections are fought. Then Thalinomics. I was asked about Thalinomics yesterday. I said it is Khalinomics. There is nothing on the thali, because in the food bundle of goods, vegetable prices have increased by 62%. Cereals have gone up by 12.6%. Sugar has gone up by 14%. Edible oil has gone up by 12%. So you're not going to eat vegetables anymore. You're only going to have cereals. And cereals are at that price because of minimum support prices and procurement. Now, so the thali is getting less because your incomes are less. So you eat less. And this has been evidenced now by surveys. We're saying that people who used to eat 2 vegetables are eating 1. People who ate 1 vegetable a day are not eating anything. And people who used to get just 2 meals a day of rice and dal are now increasingly doing with 1 meal a day. So there's widespread hunger and deprivation which is stalking the countryside. Now he's talking about Thalinomics, that you can get more in a thali. I reminded me of Raj Babbar's pronouncement that for 20 rupees you can get a good thali. So we asked him, where did you get this thali in 20 rupees? He had no answers. But this is Thalinomics is like that. It is. So I didn't take it seriously when he read it out. I won't take it seriously now after reading it also. Now the prominent themes of the budget. Now I'll tell you something about the budget. I'll tell you the most well-kept secret in the country. That when you get down to doing the budget, 90% of the budget is preset. It's like your own household budget. You know how much of milk you got to consume, how much of insurance you got to pay, how much of rent you got to pay, electricity. It's all set. You can't avoid that. It's a given. So 90% of the budget is given. It is all set. Now I examined it the first time closely when all the data was available. I found that 98% is set. That it is done last year and only 2% is available for you to do something this year. So I asked my minister, I said, but why are we doing all this? He said, this is a tradition, including the halwa, including the red box. We have to follow, and tradition keeps us going. So this is a tradition. So you package the budget any way you want. Unless there's a big item, like Manmohan Singh's budget of 1991 had only one item of significance. It said he abolished the Industrial Regulatory Act of 1956. He said, throw it in the waste bin. He took the Department of at Udyog Bhavan, he said, shut it down. Industrial licensing. There used to be a man called Ramaswamy, who was Director General Industrial Licensing. And he used to be a terror. Big industrialists, everybody would be sitting outside his office. He was only rank of a joint secretary. But he would tell you how many tons of steel you could make. And how many cars you can make. He would license everything. Now he said, Manmohan Singh said, get rid of it. So we had about 800 fellows in that department who were all well-heeled, made lots of money, were very happy with life. He said, now send them all back to departments where they will have to work. That is only one thing. One big idea. And he said, this will stimulate growth, this will, and then I'll tell you another secret. Manmohan Singh didn't want it. Manmohan Singh till 1990 was a socialist. He wrote this South-South Commission report where he warned against the rise of globalization, the rise of transnationals, the rise of capitalism, and warned against that. But Mr. Narasimha Rao was the guy who did it. Narasimha Rao dictated the note in his office. I know that for a fact because the Secretary of Industries, under whose signature the note went, he said, he was a good friend of mine, he said, I didn't write it. PM called me to his office, dictated it to me, I was the stenographer. So Narasimha Rao, he said, dictated it in one go. And he told him, before you come to my office, make the entry number in your office on the file so that it will go back to your department. And dictated it in one go, 40 minutes. He said, इसको ले जाओ और फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर को बोलो कि साइन करें इस पे और चिदम्बरम को बोलो साइन करें इस पे. So this man ran and Manmohan Singh hesitated a bit, and then Suresh Mathur called up the PM and said, sir, finance minister seems to have some reservations, he wants to have a discussion. So Narasimha Rao in uncharacteristic manner said, then we will have to look for a new finance minister. So Mathur told Dr. Singh, ki sir, PM is determined, you better sign it. So he signed it. Chidambaram, of course, welcomed it, signed it, and that's how that became something. And it was actually, but Manmohan Singh lacked up all the credit. Next morning when it was announced, everybody began to cheer. They said, how can this useless fellow Narasimha Rao, who doesn't look good, doesn't speak well, English, is all, and how can he have thought of it? So all the credit went to Manmohan Singh because the chambers loved him. And Narasimha Rao, being a very clever politician, he said, let this guy take the credit. If something goes wrong, I'll blame him. Yeah. So anyway, that's how. So budgets are given themes. Now yesterday our finance minister said, aspirational India, development, economic development, caring India. Now this is nothing. 3 silos, she called it. 3 silos. But when 90%, 98% of the budget is set, the silos are of no use. Regarding aspirational India, last night I was on television on a channel where there was a young lady from the RSS, spokeslady, who I said, savings are going down. So she said, Mr. Guruswamy, you don't need to save anymore. Young people want to spend. And that is aspirational India. Yours is the old India. So I said, fine, but then how do you get savings? How do you get investment? He said, that will come. But it's by the hidden hand. It will come. So this is aspirational India. Economic development, we know what it is. And the caring society, all governments have aimed for it, and she's just given it a new silo. Now this is the budget at a glance. Very You see 2019 and budget estimates and revised estimates. Now the budget estimates are 1 lakh crores above the revised estimates. That means you collected that much money less revenues. Your capital receipts were down. Your total receipts were down. Revenue account was down. Capital account was down. So you had 1.6 lakh crores less to spend and get into the economy last year. So this is another thing I'll tell you about budgets. The budgeted estimates and the revised estimates never tally. Have never tallied. But we'll be happy to tell you that in the end, this number nahi jud raha sahab, the joint secretary in charge of the budget will tell you, after all this budget, this is estimate बढ़ा दो. Never mind, thoda sa बढ़ाओ. So you negotiate actually for how much you will increase. Because everybody forgets. Have you ever seen a government, in a company when you go, you give the annual report of what you did last year? Have you ever seen a government give a report of what it did last year? The economic survey is supposed to be the report. But now economic surveys are becoming pamphlets of philosophy. So primary deficits increased. Central government expenditure. Now pensions you can't take away. It is there. Defense you can't reduce. It's given because 60%, 67% of defense is on salaries. Major subsidies you can't take away because fertilizer, power, sugar, milk, all that you can't take away. Agricultural activities you can take some, give some. Commerce and industry, there's nothing much to. Most of that money earmarked is used by the department itself for its upkeep. Development of the Northeast, education, 99,000. This has been coming down as a percentage of the budget. Energy has been coming down. External affairs is also set. Finance is set because that goes to the income tax fellows and customs, excise and ministry people. Health is set for the doctors. Home affairs. This budget is going up because paramilitary forces are increasing. Cost of government is increasing. So now interest is set. You can't do anything about interest. The rest, you can go down that line. Everything is set. There's nothing you can do to change. Now you can remove a little from urban development. You can remove a little from transport. You cannot remove anything from transfer to states. Tax administration costs 1,52,000 crores. That's to collect all the taxes. You have got to pay these people money, apart from the money they take from you. So you've got to pay good salaries also. Now, where does the money come from? 18% comes from corporate taxes, 17% from income tax, 4% from customs, 7% from excise, GST 18%, non-tax revenue 10%, non-debt capital receipts 6%, borrowings and other liabilities 20%. Every year you got to borrow 20%. Centrally sponsored schemes, that's where you can do some up and down, is only 9%. Central sector schemes 13%, interest 18%, defense 8%, subsidies 6%. So all that money gets set. So there's very little money to move around. But this big event which takes place, and incidentally, India is the only country in the world where there is a budget tamasha. Only country in the world. Budget is done automatically, it goes. In India, it became a big event because we wanted to know, in the 80s at least, whether the duty of DMT, which is dimethyl tetraphthalate, is going to be more than that of polytetric anhydride. One was the basic raw material used by Reliance and another basic raw material used by Bombay dyeing. If DMT went up, that means Bombay dyeing is out of favor and Reliance is in favor. And Reliance was always in favor. So PTA kept coming down and DMT kept going up till Bombay Dyeing then shut down his polyester plant. Said, I can't do it anymore. So that was the only reason why there were many things like that, but this was the main game those days, this main rivalry. And today, of course, Reliance is a $40 billion company, and Bombay Dyeing is running Go Airways. The broad spending remains the same. So like I was telling you, budgets don't change much. These figures are all sacrosanct. They've been written, chiseled in stone. Nothing, no Sitaraman, no Yashwant Sinha, no Manmohan Singh. Nobody can change that now. Because this is a big ship. Republic of India is a huge, like a tanker. When you turn it, it takes about 40 kilometers to turn. So you got to turn it slowly. So you can't promise 12.4, 14% growth rates in a tanker like that. It's all set. Now this is again another way of looking at it. Interest payments here are 24.3%, this year. So we borrowed more money last year. Defense is 17.2% of the total spending. And rupee comes from where and goes where, that I've shown you before. Now, which sector contributes what to the economy? Agriculture, forestry and fishing, which is the green, now contributes 9.2% to growth. And most of the growth is coming from manufacturing, electricity, gas consumption. Now, this is very interesting. The dark blue is 15.3. That is the growth contributed by public administration. Public administration is government. So government salaries account for, in the organized sector we have 31 million people, out of which government has 25 million people. Their salaries are going up. So they are linked with DA, TA, consumer price index, everything. Pensions go up, pay commissions come in, their salaries go up. So they account for 17% of 11.4% of GDP, and that they are growing at 15.3%. Very happy. That's one sector in India which is extremely happy, is the government sector. Government job is the best job you can have in this country. That's why PhDs want to become chaprasis. That's why now increasingly graduates are becoming jawans in the army and the paramilitary, because their scales of salary are much higher than outside world. And then nobody can fire you. You're there forever. Unless you're in the army, you won't retire. You retire at 60. And if you agitate enough, you can increase the retirable age till 62. IAS officers get extensions. So, and a great job to have. From once you're in up to the grave, you're taken care of, because you have CGHS, your health insurance, pensions, everything. But you can't have everybody given government jobs in the country. So 25 million people, and that is the sector which is contributing most to the direct taxes. That is the sector which is doing most of the consumption. So you go to any government colony, whether it is for clerical staff or whether it is for JCOs, you'll see cars there these days. New cars. And army cantonments, military cantonments, you'll see lots of new cars, because the pay commission is kicked in, salaries are good. So they are the guys who are consuming. So every year we are going through this exercise to put more money into their hands so that they spend more, we collect more taxes, then give it back to them. It doesn't dissipate very much to the people outside. So these are all these. And how does the government finance itself? 24% from borrowings and other liabilities. Corporate taxes account for 20%, income tax for 14%, customs for 9%, etc., etc. But borrowings are your biggest source of financing every year, and that keeps adding to the interest. So these are the sources of revenue. GST contributes 28% of the total tax revenue, corporate tax 28% also, personal income tax 26%, excise 11%, customs 7%. Now this is the personal income tax trend. Citizens are paying more, and that is a reality. But then you're earning more. So you're paying more, you're earning more. You're in government. 25 million people are in government. So you are paying more taxes there. You're earning more, paying more taxes. Which is why she's tried to address this issue of taxes for individual taxes. And so what has she done? She's given you a 10% tax for income between 5 to 7.5, 15%, 7.5 to 10, 20% for 10 to 12.5, 25% for 12.5 to 15, 30% for income above 15, no income tax for those with taxable income below 5 lakhs. Everybody is cheering. But she says no deduction. So what does no deduction mean? No insurance, no house rent allowance, no medical insurance, no anything, no deductions. To get no deductions, including standard deduction, you got to be living with your parents. Don't have a home loan or claim any other deductions will benefit under the new regime. Those who are living on rent and claiming HRA and deductions under ATC, ATD and so on might have to evaluate the actual savings before opting for the new regime. Now, means nothing. How many professionals are who are taxable incomes are staying with their parents? And you don't have to. So the incentive, savings was an incentive. You incentivize savings. You said take insurance, take a house loan, take a car loan, and you get deductions on them. So you do spending. Now they have taken out savings as an incentive. They are offering a new model, this hidden hand model, this Vedic economics model, that you don't have to save, we will still grow. The net loss of revenue because of this, if the projections of that are about 40,000 crores. What is the country's problem? You don't have enough money and you're giving away 40,000 crores to Vedic economics. Corporates are paying less, and just now last year she gave a further reduction. Actually the corporate income taxes are among the lowest in the world. Like it or no, believe it or not. We are close to 25% and now they're bringing it down to 22%, 15% for startups and many other exemptions. So if you don't collect money, where is the money coming to spend? Last year I got a letter from the finance minister asking for suggestions on how to increase tax revenues. No, how to decrease incidence of taxes. So I wrote a letter back. I said, you're obviously an ignorant person. Because the job of the government is to increase revenues. If you can increase revenues by decreasing tax rates, then do it. But your target should be to increase revenues. Because job of a government is to raise revenues, to invest on people, to invest on infrastructure. If you don't have revenues, where will you get money from? But they didn't reply to me, nor did they invite me for the meeting after that. But that's all right. I was not well anyway, I couldn't have gone. So, this is the trends in tax receipts. They're flat. They should be going up. As a percentage of GDP, they should be going up. They're not going up. Now, government spending growth has fallen and remains skewed towards revenue expenditure. So what is the government doing? It's spending money on itself. It's spending money on the money it borrowed. It's spending money on salaries, pensions, etc., etc. And the money it should spend on capital expenditure is 13.5% of the budget, GDP. Which means that for every 9 rupees it consumes, it is spending 1 rupee on you. It's very simple. Now that is the cost of government. What is the capital? Because capital expenditure triggers off growth. Capital expenditure goes into roads, hospitals, buildings, banks, whatever, canals. The system of economics we have is a system called tax farming. You invest so that you can get a better harvest and then you farm it for taxes. So if your tax farming is not irrigated and you're not increasing the acreage, taxes will remain static. So capital expenditure therefore becomes static. And growth of expenditure year over year is growing. Now, is this budget addressing any of these things? Have they discussed any of those things? Has the economic survey discussed it? No, I don't see any evidence of that. With the tax cuts, tax buoyancy is set to decline for next year. They've announced a series of tax cuts. So tax buoyancy, which used to be pretty high till at about 12%, is now going to come to 10.8. And the real net tax revenue will be 7.3. Now, despite the distress, rural spending has plateaued in this budget. It has become, and rural spending is where 60% of the population lives. And out of the 60%, almost half are below poverty line, because if there's 30% BPL, obviously it has to come from there. So that is plateaued. Social spending on infrastructure has also declined. That means, health, education and all these things has also decreasing. It's been plateauing. Public debt has not increased much. We have a nice mentality in the Department of Finance, which is a Baniya's mentality: don't borrow. I say, utha ke la lo paise, don't borrow. Because the interest rate is already very high. But countries which grow fast, do you know what China's debt to GDP ratio is? Any idea? 234. United States debt to GDP ratio 272. And India's is 63. Very debt averse. Because in the government we are told that if you borrow money, we are not able to get a ICOR. ICOR is very bad. Investment return on investment. Because money is consumed. 9 out of 10 rupees goes off on government itself, on salaries and all kinds of things. So you don't get a rate of return on the money you borrow. And if you borrow the money, you go to service the debt. So we don't borrow, because we are not sure of government. That's why every Prime Minister who comes to power, first week, he will say, I want to reform government. I want to make government better and more effective. But then the government swallows him up. Because Mr. Modi doesn't talk about it anymore. Because, the people who you are supposed to reform all around you, they surrounded you. And they will tie you up in knots. But only one thing they are all agreed upon very quickly is the pay commission reports. The last pay commission report gave them an increment of 23%, adding 1.06 lakhs crores to the expenditure. So you don't borrow money because you're not sure what will happen to the money, and therefore you're stagnating. Now I'll get back to the old macro picture on what is this India all about. This is the poverty map of India. The purple is the highest incidence of poverty. That is 46 to 70% of the people who live in the purple areas are poor. So if you come out of Bombay, richest city in India, one of the richest cities in Asia for that matter, and you go towards Panvel, as you come down Panvel, you hit the purple patch. From there till Itanagar, you can go through the purple patch continuously without getting off anywhere. Now that is the essential reality of India. We forget, number 3rd economy in the world, India will be a superpower. I can't see any superpower with so many people living below poverty line. And what is this great objective of becoming a superpower? Does anybody listen to America? So the great objective of superpower, how can you be a superpower with that? Can I finish? This is still current, pretty current. Because they've stopped taking out these maps anymore. It's so embarrassing here. What are India's grim realities? 62% of agricultural land is rain-fed. 53% of the population is linked to agriculture for livelihood, either as cultivators or as agricultural laborers. Reality 2. In 2010, 21.9% of Indians lived below the poverty line, defined as having a monthly household expenditure of 816 in rural areas and 1,000 in urban areas. A family of 5, monthly expenditure of 1,000 in urban areas is 200 rupees per head. Little more now. 76% of all households below median per capita income are below the median per capita income of 74,920 rupees per annum. Income inequality is rising. Rich people are increasing. 63 billionaires have as much money as the bottom 40% of the economy. Reality 4. Regional imbalances are growing. The difference between Bihar and Telangana, which is becoming an increasingly richer state, particularly in the last 10 years, the wealth has increased. So regional imbalances of population today, your construction labor in Hyderabad is increasing from Bihar and Orissa and Assam, because regional imbalances are increasing. So it has impacts on demography. 26.4% of people are illiterate still. Literacy test is very simple. If you can sign your name, you're literate. If you don't understand it, never mind. But you can sign, so you're literate. Employment in organized sector stagnating at 31 million last 5 years. Government employees 19.3, while PSUs and private sector employees only 10.65. Government capital expenditure for development is now less than 15% of annual budget. That is the reality. Now these are the projections. This is what we thought we will become when we started in year 2000, and then particularly in 2010, when the growth rate started increasing to 11, 12. 1 year the real growth rate was 17%. We said from 4 trillion, 3.72 trillion, in 2050 we will get to 43 trillion. That was the promise of that rate. Now, for that you had to be growing at 7.5% at a lick. So that tryst with destiny is effectively now gone. Now we come to whether we will keep our head above water. This was the year, the brave new world which was to come in the year 2000. And can you imagine the missed opportunity? Meantime, China just went on and on. It is going to be $60 trillion in 2050. It's going to be, we are going to be, I think at present lick will be about $20 trillion. China will be 3 times as big as us. It's already 3 times as big as us. Now, you have to benchmark against China. You don't benchmark yourself against Pakistan or Egypt, or even Bangladesh is now growing faster than us. Now, this is something Chief Economic Advisor should be worried about, the Finance Minister should be worried about, Prime Minister Modi should be worried about, but they will give you this thing of Vedic economics. We had nuclear weapons in the Mahabharata age, and Hanuman came by helicopter to Sri Lanka with Sanjeevani, and so that kind of stuff. But this is the hard world. You put money in, invest, and you reap the benefits. You don't have money to invest, you won't reap the benefits. So this is what we are missing. It's not a small thing. Jawaharlal Nehru spoke about a tryst with destiny. He probably didn't have that in mind, but that was our tryst with destiny. To be a $43 trillion country, which means that our per capita incomes in India average would have been $27,000 a year. And that is what we are missing. Now, we talk about a young population. Why demography is very important. What you become and what you can become depends on what your population looks like. This is a small lesson to illustrate that. This is Japan in 1950, after the war. Its biggest cohort of population was between that 15 to 65 age group. 15 to 65 age group is considered the most productive age group for a population. From that age, you're earning, you're saving, you're consuming, and you're in this virtuous cycle of growth. Once you come to 21, you finish education, 25, you're working, then you start buying a car, you buy a house, you keep going up. And at about 65, you stop. And that is true in our life. We stop consuming. We start hoarding money in banks. Now, when I wanted to buy a new car, and my wife said, but how long will you use it? Because, at 65 you start worrying, and at 70 you don't buy new cars. But if that cohort keeps going up, the consumption keeps coming down. So Japan in 2006 was 21% in that cohort. No consumption, no savings, no income. Children 13.6%. So add that to that, you get 34%. So your dependency ratio is that much of people are dependent on those people in between. Now see how it changes. By 2050, it's going to have nobody at the bottom. The top will be 40%. So if you go to Japan even now, the biggest cohort you will see are old people. And Japanese are now asking young Indians to come to Japan to work. So I told the Japanese counselor who I met a few months ago, I said, but who will come to Japan? Because young Indian men will go to where there are young women. Your biggest cohort is women above the age of 85. So who will come? And they are increasingly finding that as a problem. At that age, you need caregivers. People, who will change your diapers, will take you to the toilet, So no IT professional is going to go to do that. So that is very important. You transit through this middle phase and very soon it's gone. Now you see what's happening to us. We were promised to be the middle class consumer powerhouse which is going to drive world economic growth. That also we are missing. We are supposed to have the expanding middle class. You will see the light blue line at the bottom, the late bulge. Middle class will rise and drive world consumption. But that is also not happening. Now I'll show you the pyramids of India and China. You see, India has the right hand side, the perfect population pyramid. You're in between when you come to 2010 to 2035. Your dependency ratio is perfect. You can get your economic growth rate then. If you don't get it then, you'll never get it. So we are passing through the most critical phase of our national life, of the country's life. You don't get out of that trap, you won't get out. Then you can do whatever you want. Now Japan, whatever they do, the economy will not grow. Most of the Western Europe will be like that. Russia will be like that. The only country which will be growing happily because of demographic being intact is United States. United States has a great policy of attracting young people from abroad. Educated people all get, in spite of what Donald Trump says, you get your visas. You have an engineering degree, you have a medical degree, you have a nursery degree, teachers' education. You go there. And they are increasing their population. India will start tapering off from 2060. It will become aging society. That is, your dependency increases, old people will increase. That's when you need more diapers. That's when you need more walking sticks. And China has entered that age now. So you have an opportunity because the world powerhouse is slowing down. So can you go and make up for the gap? It's not going to happen. But it's not happening because Vietnam, Bangladesh, all these guys are picking up the slack because of energetic policies. See this aging. Japan is right at the top. Europe, Denmark, US, Asia just below. Now I'll come to one more macroeconomic. The world foreign reserves today consists of $13 trillion. $13 trillion are held in Western banks, out of which countries like China has $3 trillion. India has $500 billion. All that money is sitting in American banks. And most of that money is held in dollars. 63% of world reserves are held in dollars. In American banks, we have a couple of NRIs here. Tells you might get 1.2%, 2%. Max. Max. If you have large amount of money, they'll say, no, you give us some money to look after your money. So government of India gets zero by investing $452 billion in American banks. So when you say there is a money going to come from, I say, what is this reserves? You know what US's foreign reserves are? 68 billion. About 8% of India's reserves. But we are, keep saying amount of dollars we have is going up. But if it's sitting there getting nothing, it's wasting and rotting away. The dollar is depreciating at 4%, so that 400 billion in the next 30, 40 years will be zero. Will be dust. So unless you put that money to use. So one of the things I had suggested was that you have enough reserves to cover 6 months imports. And everybody, even Kaushik Basu, who's now at the World Bank and who was at Cornell University before that, has said that 300 is enough. Rest you can monetize into an India infrastructure investment fund. So literally you create your own World Bank to finance projects here with foreign money. And you administer that trust through good, solid people who will see that the money goes to good projects, not get consumed by Government of India. So there's one source of money, but we're not doing that. As I told you, our debt to GDP ratio is only 63%. Now this whole focus on black money, 22% of our economy is shadow economy. It's pretty much there with all the other big countries. China, even Britain has a lot of big shadow economy. I don't think we should be spending too much of time on pursuing shadow economies. A Chinese economist once told me that for good growth you need little inflation, little corruption, and then you get good growth. Because unless some fellow is stealing little money, he won't have money to invest in housing. And little inflation means unless prices go up, you're not going to invest today. Because you think that next year it will be worth more. So little of everything is good. But if you start pursuing policies saying that I will eliminate all fellows who hoard money and don't pay taxes, goli maar dunga, then you're going to shrivel up the economy and scare everybody out. So today they call it tax terrorism. And has corruption decreased because of this? 55% of Indians say that they have paid bribes. More than China. And that is your benchmark. And what happens is, if you can't use your money here effectively and you think that it is being wasted, you send the money abroad. Last year India exported $83 billion as illicit flows of foreign currency. And about $40 billion as licit, that is legal investments abroad. Now, do you know the house of Tatas today is bigger abroad than in India? Many of our companies are bigger abroad than in India now, because it's being difficult to invest within the country. This is the share of employment, how it is changing. Agriculture as a percentage is decreasing, but in terms of hard numbers, it's remaining where it is. But agriculture is still the bedrock of employment. I spoke about this earlier. Now, the sovereign funds, whose money do we need in India? If you want a railroad, you need money which will be there for 40 years. You build a railroad, you get an ROR of 3%, 2.5%. So for 40 years, it has to be stay invested. Only countries have this kind of money. No Citibank, no Bank of America, no ICICI Bank will put money into infrastructure projects. Sovereign money, countries like Norway, China, Abu Dhabi, Kuwait, all these guys have sovereign funds. So yesterday they announced tax write-off for sovereign funds is basically because of that, to attract sovereign funds. That's a positive idea in the budget. Now this is something which we have to really worry about. Our trade with China is getting increasingly skewed. Last year the balance of payments deficit was $60 billion. And how are we going to reduce it? We still don't have a plan. So now the RSS gurus have been saying that China se maal kharidna band karenge. So India's share of China's exports is 2.6%. They don't really care. China's share of India's exports 3.6%. So it's not very big. India's share of China's imports 0.8%. China's share of India's imports 15.8%. So we are dependent on them. Your pharma industry, your IT industry, all are dependent on China. So you can't talk loosely about China anymore. The only way to sort out China is to get them to invest here. The final problem is that jobs are scarce and regular benefits even more so. Most people have contract labor in this country. How are you going to increase jobs? Corporate jobs, as you can see, have been decreasing. Regular jobs without benefits has been increasing. So how do we do better? The finance minister hasn't addressed any of these issues. She's addressed issues of how you can live with your parents and save money. And she's addressed such issues. But no macroeconomic content in that budget. And she took 2 hours, 40 minutes and didn't read the last 5 pages because she fainted. I am also about to faint now. So I'll sit down and leave it to you for questions. Thank you.
So with this comment, I'll open for discussions. And please raise your hand and Mike will follow to you. And yes, there.
Particularly with the present government, it was perhaps there even before, but it has taken a disease form in the current regime, is integrity to data. So we can deal with any problem that the economy is confronting as long as data keeps coming and there is no influence or withholding of honest data. So the moment you have dishonesty in data, withholding of data, suppressing, delegitimizing data, if CMIE produces some data, it's delegitimized. Statistical institutions that were set up by the government are being delegitimized. So I see the biggest threat to actually monitoring performance is the data itself. I can't imagine any entity, any industry, let alone government, being run where the data itself is suspect. So any comments on that?
What they have been doing, systematically doing, is saying that the data is not correct. When you have NSSO data, which is respected all over the world as as very reliable data, they say no, it's not correct. They say EPFO data is to be relied. EPFO is Employee Provident Fund Organization data. That is, if you had 10 employees and you had 11 employees, automatically you come under EPFO. So you could have some growth of employment because more people have come into that. But if you have 450 million people in the unorganized sector, you're not able to create jobs because you haven't put money, you say data is wrong. So this has become a habit now with the government. It doesn't accept any data. According to its data, according to its own, astral derivations, the economy is growing at, the Nirmala Sitharaman said, 10% real GDP. She said it in one line, passing. We'll grow at 10%. You are at 6.08% today. Real GDP, nominal GDP. Nominal means you adjust for inflation, you are down to the real GDP. So inflation at 7%. So you are actually today contracting. But so when you are in that situation, you don't like data. Your data has the way of, speaking the truth.
But one of the biggest issue which in the ease of doing business, once you have established a business, you are running it, is the compliance aspect. And the compliance aspect is so poor in the GST network today. I mean, I'm just coming 2 days back when it was the last day for filing the annual return for the first of the GST years, 2017-18. 7 hours we sat before the computer and it just tells you, please wait, there are 150,000 people trying to file returns. Why is it that, that 10% people who are supposed to implement it and the 80%, 90% people who are telling them what to do it, even then you cannot tell those 10% people on how to build a network. You're counting on the GST network to deliver revenue to you. It should take me 5 minutes to file a return, especially because, the GST network encourages on-the-fly filing. I mean, every time you generate an invoice, you log it into the network then and there. So it should be, literally a few minutes job to pick up the data from there and give you all the, your monthly returns already filled up, and you only correct it.
Yeah. Okay, that is one thing that Sitharaman has promised yesterday in the budget from 1st April that the GST regulation will be much simpler. We'll have to see how simpler it will be. This is... No, but I think now they got to know about it, and if they still don't do it, actually, while the negotiations were going on with the finance ministers, with Arun Jaitley in the GST Council, this filing of so many papers were also discussed by some secretaries and some ministers very seriously. GST from 1st April will be much simpler. We'll see how simpler it is.
Yeah, this is Surana. My simple question is regarding education boost, education sector. Yesterday's boost, which the finance minister has given a lot of focus on it, and also the degree level of education system, which would be made online. And what is your take on it?
Education, is largely a state subject. Primary education, school education, state subject. What is the central government's education goes for higher education. And they give some money to state governments also for their education schemes. 89,000 crores in the budget. 99.300. I thought it was 89,000. 99.300 is nothing. What is the percentage of GDP? It's not even 0.5% of GDP. We should be targeting something like 4.5% of GDP. That countries which spend 12-14% of GDP on education. Why has Kerala got such high indices? Kerala spends 10% of its state GDP on education. So this is not enough. And we should be doing more on primary education, on residential schools, There is talk of some increase in residential schools, but all that has to increase. Private sector is not going to go and build a school in Babajari village in Adilabad district. Simple. No, they are not. No, they don't. No, they will build a school where there are people with money to pay. But school education has to be seen as a merited subsidy. That is, you got to subsidize everybody's education and give that midday meals. So parents will send their children to school, and the children will get educated, and you have teachers, and you have a system of monitoring the schools. I once went to a village where they told me the teacher hadn't come for 20 days. So they said, "Sab kya karna hai iska?" So I said, when he comes next time, you tie him up to the neem tree and give him a few hits and say, "Agle baar nahi aayega to aur hoga." So then somebody called me Naxalite. So so there is a problem in governance. It's not a problem. Why in Haryana nobody goes to government schools? You've got private schools everywhere. They'll have, St. Mary's, St. Joseph, St. Anne, everything St. Devilal, English school. But because government education just doesn't work, it doesn't deliver. There is no system of control.